Welcome back to the show. I am Chelsea Reber, and today, as usual, joined by Jenny Ligon, the Associate Director of NCTM. Jenny, thanks for being here today. Super excited to catch up again.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining us on the show today is John Balchunas. He is the NIIMBL Director of Workforce Development. John, it's so great to have you on today.
Hey, happy to be here.
And just a reminder to our listeners, if you find this video helpful or interesting, please leave a like below and comment about your favorite parts. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. Jenny, the biopharma industry is growing fast globally. This, of course, means we need to have a workforce ready to support that growth. Can you talk a little bit about how NCTM is engaged with regional and national efforts to grow this workforce?
Absolutely. So I can definitely speak from the standpoint of our regional efforts. We have been around, as you know, as you heard in our previous episodes, for this is going to be our 10th year anniversary in 2022, and have slowly been serving the needs of Texas biotech and kind of neighboring states. But COVID has exploded our region here in Bryan College Station. As I'm sure you're aware, Fujifilm Diosynth will have 1,000 employees this calendar year, and they have been onboarding them at a very rapid pace. We have actually trained almost 250 of their employees over the past year and a half, and that's basically what our small team has been doing the whole time. So a lot of what we do is contract training, and so basically that's continuing education unit-based curricula, and it's not kind of in an academic setting. It's very much hands-on labs, and we're taking folks who are unfamiliar with the biopharmaceutical manufacturing industry and giving them skills to hit the ground running, and hopefully lessen the on-the-job training that they'll have to perform. So we've been very, very busy since August of 2020, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down.
Yeah, I was going to say no slowdown in sight. Well, Jenny, the biopharma industry is also global, and the training facilities are expensive to build, as you know. How has NCTM been able to broaden its reach beyond a regional audience to support companies in other locations?
So we have kind of had to be creative because we're not located in a traditional pharmaceutical or biopharmaceutical hub, biologics manufacturing hub. Texas is traditionally known for oil and gas, and I don't think that's a big secret to anyone, but biotechnology is growing rapidly. There's a lot of research and discovery, obviously with the medical center and in Austin and everything that's growing. Dallas is growing to be a big hub as well. But not everybody is going to send tens to hundreds of their new hires to Bryan College Station and incur travel and everything, all the expenses that come along with it on top of fees for training, right? So we have kind of a creative model where we take our curricula and we license it, we share it with other institutions. And so, for example, there's a company that is out of Oklahoma City. They're about 6 hours away from us, and they really desperately were onboarding because they had some rapid contract manufacturing agreements that they had and did not have the workforce. And Oklahoma City is not known to have that workforce either. So they desperately needed some onboarding, some customized training to bring folks from the universities, to bring folks from the service industry. And so we contracted with them, and we did a creative agreement where we did train the trainer.
Okay.
And so they had a staff of trainers that focused on upstream and downstream and analytics and all of the related manufacturing processes that go with this industry. We brought them here. We trained those 6 trainers and on the curricula, and then we created a licensing agreement with them. The training that we put together for them was kind of customized around their proprietary processes and internal unit operations and the manufacturing that they perform. So it was very specialized to envision what would in an end be their internal on-the-job training kind of onboarding. And so what we did is we licensed it to them. We shared the files with them, the instructor's guides, the student handouts, the lab activities, the lectures, all of the curricula that we built, and we licensed it to them. And they basically just let us know every student that goes through it. We issue continuing education certificates, and they put I think they put about 280 folks through that onboarding program that we customized for them. So that was like our pilot program. We built it out. We said, hey, this isn't that scary. We could do this, right? So we are able to work with other centers by doing and sharing that type of content. And this may be a good segue to introduce our
Yeah.
other guest, John, because a project that we just got funded rather from NIIMBL,
Okay.
tongue twister,
Hmm.
is called Establishing Test Beds. And we're working with 4 minority serving institution universities across the United States. And we're going to transfer our certificate program to them so they can just hit the ground running. They need to purchase the equipment, we'll do train the trainer, and then they can just start serving their markets automatically instead of spending 4 years building curricula, right? So
Right.
we're really excited about that. So I'll
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is great. Yeah. As we mentioned, our special guest today is John Balchunas, NIIMBL Director of Workforce Development, and we'll bring him in right now. John, can you first tell me what is NIIMBL?
Sure. So NIMBL is, I guess, let me start. Stands for the National Institute for Innovation in Manufacturing Biopharmaceuticals. So we call it NIMBL for short because it's short and easy. In a nutshell, we are a public-private partnership. We are federally funded. We're one of about 16 manufacturing USA institutes that are all focused on different sectors within advanced manufacturing. Obviously, we're focused on biopharmaceuticals. Our focus is not on the actual drugs themselves and getting them to patients. Our focus is on essentially how can we make that happen quicker. Manufacturing within our industry is expensive. It takes time. It takes a lot of money, and the patients die the longer that takes. And so, if we can speed up that process, if we can make it more efficient in terms of the actual manufacturing processes that are done, it's really our mission space. And obviously, workforce development is a key part of that. And so, at the end of the day, we are a funding agency, but we also do stuff. And so, I like to say that we fund projects and we do things. From a workforce side, which is sort of the realm that I sit in, a lot of what we do is really focused on how we can bring that community together nationally. Jenny represents obviously the premier training center within the whole Midwest and that whole region, but there are other training centers within the U.S. There are other pockets of expertise around the country, and how can we help build on capacity that exists around the country? How can we take lessons learned from regions that have done it well and help regions and communities that need it? And so how can we help share best practices is a big piece of what we do. And we also like to just pilot new projects, new approaches to solving some of the industry's challenges around workforce and talent development.
All right, John. Yeah, thank you so much for that information about NIIMBL. Listeners, if you have a friend or a family member interested in learning more about biotechnology, share our videos with them, please. Jenny, I'm going to go back to you. You've been involved with NIIMBL since the beginning. Can you maybe talk about 1 or 2 examples of partnerships or projects that would not have been possible otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. I'm probably NIIMBL's biggest advocate on the planet. We did join very early on when it was established. And I applaud them for bringing together industry and academia and not-for-profits and obviously educators and bringing us all to the forum and allowing us just an opportunity to network, right? So a lot of the organizations that are out there, they're big, right? And you really don't know who to go to. And so I think, NIIMBL is big, but they have uh, really made it an opportunity for you just to it's almost intimate. Even
Mhm.
as big as it is, it's almost intimate. And the working groups that they put together are just fantastic for us to be able to get to know one another and really just find those connections and be able to share curricula and identify what industry's particular needs are, or maybe say, hey, there's a technical project that industry isn't going to perform because it's just not it's not enough money for them or whatever, right? So they
Mhm.
may want to contract with academia to have the researchers to perform the small scale of the process, and then it would scale up and hand it off to the company or whatever. So that's the technology projects and stuff that NIIMBL does. But a great deal of what we've done with them is workforce development related, and we had several opportunities very early on. We had a program called Door to Floor, and that was kind of my crackpot vision of basically saying we can take somebody who's a complete novice to this industry and cut their on the job training from 6 months down to 2 months.
Oh,
I
wow.
was just, I
Mhm.
was really just aggressive with this. And so we put together this certificate program, and it is 5 online courses that total about 20 hours of contact training and just really cover the basics like takes you from what is the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. And a lot of what most people know about the industry is like, oh, that's what I get from CVS. That's my Advil, right? But biologics manufacturing is basically taking living cells and growing the medicine within that, right? That's just the simplest way to kind of simplify it, obviously way oversimplify it, but utilizing living things to make our drugs, right? And it's so, the growth in cell and gene therapy and everything that's occurring right now is just, this industry is exploding. And so there's just not enough workforce out there, and that is the plain and simple truth. And I know John will back me on this as well.
Yep.
And so what we did with that door to floor program is we funneled several cohorts of trainees through, and we worked with them to identify jobs in companies and within the industry. Right. That was more just like a pilot project for us, because that was the groundwork that set the stage to do this establishing test beds with the minority serving institutions that I alluded to that will be taking place over the next year and a half.
Okay.
We literally just kicked that meeting, that project off on February 15th. So we have, it's bright and ahead of us and lots of work to do. But it was a way for us to say, look, industry recognizes this training program and this certificate program, and industry desperately needs more workforce. So let's get other institutions involved, and obviously we target institutions that have leanings towards biotechnology and things of that sense. So they're not creating it from scratch. But we have some great partners on this project. And John, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything more about the workforce vacancies and gaps out there nationally.
Yeah, and we could probably talk more about that. I think it is worth noting just sort of the bigger context in terms of how all this, how all this works. From NIIMBL's perspective, again, I mentioned we're federally funded, and so our funding agency, we're funded through the U.S. Department of Commerce and through NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and so there's inherently a large aspect to sort of our mission that's focused around U.S. competitiveness and resiliency in manufacturing. And the more we can make sure that as a country we are prepared to grow, as an industry, the better, the more resilient we are, and the stronger that base of manufacturing within the country is. And I think that's really part and really front and center with your testbed project that you just kicked off is it's back to how can you build capacity in areas and in at training centers that don't necessarily have the know-how or the equipment to do it. And so by helping them get the equipment in place and training them on how to use that equipment, they can then in turn train for the future workforce.
Absolutely.
Well, Jenny, speaking of partnerships and opportunities, do you feel like there are opportunities that are not being taken advantage of at NCTM? And if so, why?
Opportunity wise, well, I could tell you we've completely covered the workforce gamut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Education capacity. In our previous episodes, you've learned that we obviously do more than just contract training for industry, but we also collaborate with the Masters of Biotechnology program within Texas A&M's Chemical Engineering Department. We do these train the trainer programs, but our team is extremely, and I'm very excited that in a previous episode, you guys heard about the fact that we have research capacity, because understand that we have these brilliant research scientists on our team, okay? And bless their hearts, they have just been delivering this training nonstop for the past almost 2 years, and they have such great expertise in understanding the equipment and understanding the science of cell biology and all of these fancy things that are way, way, way over my head. But I want us to be able to maybe target organizations like NIIMBL, like NIH, like NSF, and get the dreams and the visions of how these great scientists that we have on our team. And I don't want anybody to get any ideas out there about stealing them away from us, because they're at CTMs. But they are, they have dreams and visions and passions and research passions too. So and I know our director is very excited to be able to do more of that kind of applied research, that support for the industry, that process development, the scale-up projects for small startups who are at the bench top and they don't know how to take it from a test tube to a bioreactor, right? Just trying to help figure out those strategies for them. So letting the team dream here beyond just workforce development. And I think that we have a great opportunity to take kind of that arm of research and applied research and start focusing on that, and then also allowing us to advise other educational institutions on train the trainer, on curriculum adaptations and addressing new technologies, cell and gene therapy, addressing the new curricula down the line, everything. Because the industry, the truth about this industry is that there's still so much, very, very much unknown about it.
Yeah.
And it is growing explosively and everything is in discovery phase. So can you imagine how we're always constantly trying to play catch up
Right.
with workforce development and training programs, right? And I know John would attest to that as well.
Well, the growth. I mean, the growth is something you touched on that earlier on, and it's worth coming back to because when NIIMBL started, gosh, I guess 6 years ago now. We talked to in talking to our companies at the time, our member companies, a lot of them would speak to the fact that by and large they could find their workforce today, but they all knew collectively, and this is again 5 or 6 years ago, that in 5 years, as cell and gene therapy take off, that the industry is going to be in a pinch point for talent. And little did they know then that we were going to get hit with this whole thing called the pandemic that kind of changed and kind of exacerbated all of those needs because all these companies, all these biopharma companies, are the very companies that are developing the vaccines and therapies that are that are being used to battle the pandemic. And so the industry is growing like gangbusters, and you can talk to pretty much any biopharma company, and it's really become clear that they are having trouble finding the talent they need now. And so as they continue to grow, it raises the question of what can we do, as educators, as a community, and as a whole ecosystem nationally, to really make sure that our industry gets the workforce that it needs.
Well, John, kind of on that wave, from a national perspective, what do you see as the big challenges that the country is going to face in the coming years? I mean, we talked about the pandemic, not really sure where that's going, and then obviously workforce. But is there anything else that you see when it comes to challenges in the next few years?
Well, I think the big one, honestly, kind of piggybacks off my previous comment. I mean, so the reality is the industry is growing rapidly, and I think the challenge though is that our industry, by and large, is pretty conservative when it comes to hiring, and so they tend to see the bachelor's degree as the be all and end all, as sort of your golden ticket into the industry. And the industry also strongly values experience. And so while a lot of other industries have benefited from things like credentialing or certification or apprenticeships or micro credentials and kind of other ways to show experience, our industry really hasn't caught up. There's little examples here and there. And I think one of the big challenges that our industry is going to face, or one of the big you know things that our industry has yet to realize that I think will really help the industry down the road, is if we can get the industry to see the value in some of these other approaches towards finding talent, because it's really going to need some innovative thinking in terms of how it's finding its people.
Jenny, how do you see NCTM positioned to help address those challenges?
Well, I think that we have put ourselves in a position to kind of be leaders at the forefront of maybe helping those newer biotech kind of hubs, those workforce development sites to build up and be able to serve the growing industry in their regions. Okay. But I want to tag on to what John was saying about the factor that the bachelor's degree or even master's degree, depending upon what role they're going to serve. If they're working for process development, yeah, it's an advanced degree, and we put together as another NIIMBL project that we had, and I wanted to allude to this earlier, but we had a program where we put military veterans through the certificate program as well, because we recognize that military veterans, nobody knows how to follow protocol better than somebody in the military
Right.
service. And then if you can't follow protocol, why you need to track your deviations so closely and report that back, just in all of the things that are required in a highly regulated environment like is biopharmaceutical manufacturing. And so we put a couple of cohorts of veterans through the program, and some of them were degreed, some of them were not, some of them were in the process of getting their degrees, and so many of the companies that we talked to for the veterans to interview with post-training, they were just giddy to hire veterans. So a lot of them actually have these kind of veteran programs. So, they understand what they've already brought to the table. They understand that they got the certificate post-training. So several of them got very lucrative opportunities, not just in Bryan College Station, but in Frederick, Maryland, in North Carolina, in California, Florida. So I think that the big thing that NCTM can do is obviously just stay engaged with organizations like NIIMBL, just be very successful on our establishing test bed project and just mentor those other sites to become leaders in workforce development as well, and just try to keep pace with the growing industry. It is massive and exciting, terribly exciting.
Yeah. Well, Jenny and John, the work that both of you are doing is fascinating, and it speaks to so many different people. I kind of want to get both of you to comment on how our viewers, whether they're students, educators, or maybe biopharma professionals, can find opportunities to engage with NCTM or NIIMBL. So, John, why don't you comment first, please?
Yeah, well, I mean, so honestly, kind of to talk out of the other side of my mouth from my other comment about the bachelor's degree being sort of the gold standard. The other reality is, as Jenny alluded to, that is the reality. And so there are a lot of scientists, there are a lot of engineers, but I think the reality is it's also an industry that attracts and needs people from just about every discipline. And so we're not talking about a bunch of biotechnology majors. We're not talking about a bunch of chemical engineers. Yes, we are, but we're also talking about people that are interested in statistics or math or business or communication for that matter. And so I think the biggest message I always try and give people is that there are career opportunities within our industry for literally anybody. And I think I think the big challenge that our industry faces is that far too many students and their parents know that this industry is out there. They hear the term manufacturing and it's not for them, or they hear biopharma or biotech and they think that's research working in a lab wearing a white lab coat. And I think it's trying to dispel some of these misconceptions and stereotypes around what the industry is, and that it's really a lot broader than that.
That's a great point.
That is a very good point. And to add on to that, I think one of the things that we are working on, I'm in the Workforce Advisory Committee with NIIMBL and work with John very closely on some projects. And one of the things that we are working on is a potential white paper to kind of dispel those myths, to say, first of all, we need to do a heck of a lot more marketing about this industry,
right?
Not just to potential, high schoolers considering what degree path they need to follow or vocational training path to get into this industry, or to the parents, obviously, to industry themselves. Because again, if I can put a military veteran through a program and some pharmaceutical company in the Northeast, which is traditionally known to be big pharma, territory, right? It looks at it and goes, "Oh my God, I didn't even know this existed," right? So we've just got to just educate about what is out there to help solve these problems. And organizations like NIIMBL are just so essential and critical, because this has given us an audience to be able to say, "I have a solution for you. I can probably pump out a couple hundred people for you if you got a big contract. You got a multi-billion-dollar contract to manufacture a big blockbuster drug or whatever. So, please reach out to NCTM. You can email our programs email. You can visit our website. I'm pretty accessible, that as you will learn through and have learned through these episodes, that we are here to help. And, we everybody that's here is just extremely passionate about this industry.
Well, John Balchunas, thank you so much for joining us today, but I want to give you one more opportunity. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Well, again, it was a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to talk to you guys. I think similar to as Jenny mentioned, I'd say feel free to reach out. I'm accessible. You can find my contact info on NIIMBL's website. Google us. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline in terms of some different initiatives targeting high school students, targeting different sort of diverse audiences within the industry, and I just, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.
All right. John Balchunas, NIIMBL Director of Workforce Development. Thanks for joining us. Jenny Ligon, Associate Director of NCTM. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm Chelsea Reber. Learn more about our available trainings by visiting the website nctm.tamu.edu or by viewing our Facebook page. Thanks for tuning in.